Thank you all for joining. We are honored to have Todd Ronnei here with us, who is going to go over his award-winning Winston Churchill exhibit, Scott 1264. It's won 13 gold awards or large gold awards, and is an issue that is genuinely has always been fascinating to me. Again, just as a reminder to everybody, I'm going to mute all the lines so everybody won't get too many interruptions. And this will be available on the YouTube channel as well as on the AFDCS website. So if you want to go back and rewatch it, or if anybody reaches out to you looking for it, that's where it will be. And I'll be periodically letting new folks join us as we're going along. We'll hold for questions until the end. So, feel free to just kind of make a note or anything like that. And I know Todd will be ready to answer anything you have once we get to the end. So with that, Todd, I'll turn the floor over to you, sir.
All right. Well, thanks, Mike. And thanks, everyone, for joining tonight. As Mike said, I want to talk tonight about my exhibit on the Winston Churchill Memorial issue from 1965. I've been asked a bunch of times, why this issue? Why do you collect this? Why Churchill? Back in college, I was a speech and communications major, and I took a class on British oratory. And of course, Mr. Churchill was a prominent part of that class, and him and his speeches and his leadership during World War II just fascinated me. So I started to do a little deeper dive on him, and naturally that led to me starting a Churchill topical collection. And that was back in the 80s. And of course, that was the era before online buying. So I bought my material at stamp shows and through dealers that you wrote to in the mail. Imagine that. The collection sort of stalled a few years later because there just was a dearth of material. Then eBay happened, and then the internet happened, and there was material at your, a plethora of material, just more than you could handle. So I like many of us, I dove right into that and really started gathering material. And that led me to thinking, well, I've got so much stuff here, I'd really started thinking about exhibiting, and how do you share this with other collectors? And so I'd never been an exhibitor before, but going to stamp shows, I would make a careful study of exhibits, especially the first day cover exhibits, because that's what interested me the most. And then I would at the shows, I would go to the feedback that the judges gave on exhibits and carefully listen to them and see what they were saying about the exhibits. I also started reading as much as I could about exhibits, and there's a number of sources out there for good information. One of the books that I got here, you might recognize this. This is the Philatelic Exhibitor's Handbook. This was originally written by Randy Neal, and then it was rewritten by Ada Prill some years later. I don't know if that book is still available, but if it's still in print. But if you haven't exhibited before, it's still a great resource. I would suggest you get that book and study it very carefully. Another upcoming resource specifically for first day cover exhibiting Andrew McFarlane, who is one of the premier first day cover exhibitors out there. He is writing a book right now specifically about first day cover exhibiting. So when that book comes out, I expect it to be another fabulous resource. But at any rate, I was finally ready to dip my toes into the exhibiting world in 2007. I felt I had enough material on this 1965 issue that I could put together a decent exhibit, and I did. And it was initially at 5 frames, and since it was a first day cover exhibit, I felt that I really should start right at the top, and so I had that exhibit at Americover in 2007, and to my great surprise and delight, I got a vermeil for that exhibit. So I was off and running. The exhibit continued to grow and continued to change as I got more feedback from judges and from other collectors. I continued to show it until about 2015, at which point I felt I needed to give it a rest a little bit, and I put it aside for 3 years. When I was ready to say, well, I've got more material here, and I want to do it again, I totally rewrote it from page 1 all the way to the end. Now the exhibit is at 10 frames, which is the maximum amount of frames you can have in an exhibit. And it's been shown a few more times since then. I think it's mostly retired now, but after having been out there for 15 years, I don't know if I'll show it again, but I'd still like to share it with you tonight. And so with that, I'm going to switch my screen here to, hopefully you'll be able to see you should be seeing, yes, this is the title page of my exhibit. Now, just an exhibiting basic is what do you do? What is the purpose of an exhibit? Why are you exhibiting? It is, some people have the misconception that you're putting your collection in frames. You're putting it on pages, and then you put the pages in the frame, and that's your collection, and that's your exhibit. If you leave with nothing else tonight, I hope you learn that an exhibit is a story. You have to tell a story with an exhibit, just like you were, reading a book. And an exhibit has a story. It has a beginning, it has a middle, it has a conclusion. Much like a book, it has chapters. And as you can see on my title page here, I have on the left side the exhibit plan. These are basically my chapters of my story. Starting like in a book with a preface, and then you can see all the other headings there, and we'll be going through those with each one. Your title page, as any judge will tell you, is probably the most important, one of the most important pages in your exhibit. You have to grab the attention of the viewer right away, and if you fail to do that, the viewer will just move on, and they won't pay any attention to your exhibit at all. So what I've done here is give a brief explanation of the subject of the stamp. I just state very plainly at the beginning, Churchill died in 1965, and that the U.S. issued a stamp for him just 109 days after his death. That's a significant fact because the U.S. doesn't issue a whole lot of stamps for foreigners, honoring foreigners, and to do it for someone as quickly as they did for Churchill in 1965, that pretty much made it an important issue. And one of the criteria for when you exhibit is to explain why the issue that you're showing is important. You know, what is the importance of this issue? And my theory here, at any rate, is that the subject was so well known and so well regarded in the United States that a stamp honoring him was kind of a foregone conclusion. Now, this is what is called a traditional first day cover exhibit. There are other kinds of first day cover exhibits that, you know, for instance, focus on a single cachet maker. But in a traditional exhibit, you're focusing on one stamp or a set of stamps. And that has a sequence to it. And basically, you're telling the story of the entire stamp with a focus on first day covers. In a traditional first day cover exhibit, you can have about 70% of the exhibit should consist of the actual first day covers. The other 30%, you can tell the rest of the story. And so even though this is a first day cover exhibit, you'll note here that I don't start with the first day cover on the first page. In fact, we don't get to first day covers for way down until we get down to about this point here. So anyway, let me just take you through some of this here. Okay, well, too far. Okay, like a book, I have a preface here. I want to do two things in my preface. I want to first establish why the stamp was issued where it was, which was in Fulton, Missouri. And so that this page is devoted to that. Now, if you know anything about, you know, Churchill's history here, you know, he came to the United States many times over the course of his lifetime. And probably one of his more memorable visits was after World War II, when he was out of power in Britain. And he received an invitation to speak at Westminster College, a tiny liberal arts college in rural Missouri. And at first, when you first think of that, you think that's, you know, that's bizarre. How did that come about? You'll remember that after World War II, Harry Truman was in the White House. He was from Missouri. And Harry Truman's good friend, Major General Harry Vaughn, was his military aide. And Vaughn was a graduate of Westminster College in Fulton, Missouri. The president of the college wrote to Vaughn and said, we would like to get Winston Churchill to come here. Is there any way you can make that happen? So Harry Vaughn went to his friend Harry Truman and said he had the invitation from the college for Churchill. And so Truman took the invitation and wrote on the bottom, you know, hey, please come. And if you do that, I'll go with you and I'll introduce you. That invitation was sent to Churchill, and remarkably, he accepted that offer. So it would have been significant event in any case for Churchill to, you know, come to the U.S. and give a speech. What made this speech more memorable and historic was that this was the first time Churchill publicly spoke of the danger that the Soviet Union presented to the free world. And he, in his way of speaking, he always could turn a phrase. He said that an iron curtain had descended across the continent of Europe, with the Soviet sphere on one side and the Western side on the other. And The press focused on this phrase Iron Curtain, and in fact, it became a standard way of describing the Soviet sphere of influence for decades afterwards. So long way of saying that is why the stamp was issued in Fulton, Missouri. I've got two items on this page. One is an actual ticket to the speech, not a philatelic item, but it was just too good just to not put in the exhibits. And then I've got a cover here that was contemporary of the time. This was by William Linto, who was kind of an infamous cover maker during the war years and afterwards. He produced thousands of covers, and he produced 14 of these covers, noting that Churchill's speech and Churchill spoke of the danger of the Soviet Union, and that was not a message that was well received all over the world. I mean, people thought that was either an exaggeration or a dangerous thing to say. The Truman administration didn't specifically endorse what he said, but it turned out, as usual, Churchill was right in what he was saying. So, having established why the stamp was issued in Fulton, my next page in the preface is the reason for the stamp, and that is, of course, a memorial stamp after he died. Winston Churchill was celebrated his 90th birthday in November of 1964. He was very frail at that time, and just 10 days into the new year of 1965, he suffered a massive stroke and slipped into a coma. And the Churchill family made this fact known, and of course that news spread across the whole world. It also gave stamp collectors, who are never shy about creating covers for special events, it gave them a lot of lead time in order to get covers ready for when the inevitable happened. Winston Churchill didn't do them any favors by dying on a Sunday morning. And as stamp collectors know, getting postmarks on a Sunday can be challenging. But fortunately, quite a few collectors were actually successful in this. This cover here, this is the cachet by Herman Mall, very well-known creator of hand-drawn and hand-painted covers. This is one he actually sent to another well-known cover maker, Ralph Dyer. This cover is actually postmarked on Sunday, January 24th, the day Churchill died. Another collector, unknown collector, I don't know who, had a number of postal items canceled in Fulton, Missouri on that day. Of course, not knowing that a stamp was going to be issued there just a few months later. And then just another philatelic item noting the death is, here's a memo that went out to all postmasters telling them that they should put their flags at half-staff by order of President Johnson. So this is a nice tie-in. It's from the post office department. So naturally, I think it's a great piece for the exhibit here. So that takes care of my preface. Now let's actually get into some of the stamp details. Everybody should recognize this picture of Churchill. It's the famous angry lion picture, portrait taken by Joseph Karsh. He took this picture in 1941, and it's probably the most popular or the most well-known picture of Churchill ever taken. And it became the basis for many, many stamps, including the US stamp. and including the Canadian stamp and the 2 British memorial stamps and quite a number of other ones. So I use this to show what the source of the design. If the stamp is based on original artwork, and you want to exhibit that, obviously you'd want to include something of that nature in the exhibit to show the evolution of the stamp design. But I originally had, when I first did the exhibit, I had a copy of the picture that I had, it was a digital print that a digital copy that I had printed. I was told by a judge or maybe one or more of them that, you know, find a better way to present that picture. And it took me a while, but I found this postcard, and the postcard was of a good size, fits nicely on a page. It's you know, it's clear, and it did the trick. Now I'm moving into the publicity and distribution of the stamp. For most issues of the 60s and 70s, you can usually find at specialty dealers some of this, what's called paraphilatelic material, or ephemera. And here we have the post office press release announcing that the stamp is going to be issued. It was accompanied by a photographic essay, and they would send these out to newspapers and philatelic publications to alert them that a new stamp is coming. And these press releases, this is about 3 pages long. For purposes of the exhibit, you don't have to show every page of it. I just show the first page, even though all of the pages are actually attached. It's amusing to read this press release now because whoever wrote it had a real flair for writing, and I highlight one such passage from there. Whoever wrote it also made 2 factual mistakes in it. I point that out here too. One that's kind of a minor mistake about how many times it took him to pass an entrance exam for the Royal Military College. But another mistake made in here that said Churchill was a member of Parliament both as a Lord and Commoner. That's not correct. He was never in the House of Lords. He was always a commoner. But it was interesting to me as I looked at cachets and putting this together, how many times that phrase was repeated. So you could tell that many cachet makers took that information at face value and repeated that same error in cachets. And we'll see some of those coming up. Another common item to have in a traditional exhibit here is the page from the postal bulletin announcing the stamp to postal employees. The postal bulletins, the whole series, the whole run of them are available online as PDFs. It's not acceptable to print that page out and put that in your exhibit. You actually have to have a page from an actual printed copy from the time it was distributed. So this is a page from the April 1965 issue that talked about and gave the details of the stamp for postal employees. Another way they publicized new stamps was to put a poster up in post office lobbies announcing the stamp to the general public. These posters are relatively common today, not because people saved them from the post offices, but because stamp collectors could subscribe to these posters and receive each new one as the U.S. government printing office printed them. So they're relatively common today because so many collectors subscribed to them and kept them in the collection for all those years. What's not common are these items here. You know, as today, the Postal Service does not want stamps put on sale before the official first day. So these are two items that they employ to help prevent that. This green label over here on the left, when a post office would order a case of stamps, in which case that means 25 pads. So that's 125,000 stamps. It's a rather big order. But they would slap one of these labels on here just to make sure that the post office knew that not to put those on sale before the day after the first day, which would here would be May 14th. They also had a larger piece, the one here on the right, which served the same purpose. It was included with shipments of stamps to post offices. Again, warning them, don't put it on sale early. We don't want any stamps sold before the first day. And for this particular issue, I think it was pretty effective because in my 20-some years of collecting this issue, I've only seen one cover that was possibly issued early. It had a postmark date of May 7th. Then after doing a little bit more research, I realized May 7th was an impossible date because the Bureau of Printing and Engraving didn't even make the first shipment until May 8th. So that cover that I had, that at first I thought that I was very excited that it wasn't early use cover, turned out to be just a cover with a bad postmark on it. Moving on from publicity and distribution, the next chapter in the exhibit is talking about the stamp itself. One thing you're going to want to do is to demonstrate, or is to illustrate here, the various markings on a painted stamp. Here I've got the Ziploc. Lloyd's probably happy to see Ziplocs. And I've got each position here with in each corner here. The next page shows all the available plate blocks for this issue. Now, whether it's necessary to do this, you know, I've talked to various judges, and some of them are kind of on the say, yeah, you should always include that. Some of others say it's kind of overkill. But here I've included all 4 plates that were issued in all 4 positions. And I gave some history here of the production of the stamp. The Bureau of Engraving and Printing initially created 4 different plates in April of 1965. They printed some stamps with those and deemed those to be unacceptable. So they destroyed the stamps and they destroyed the plates and created 4 new plates. And these plates went to press on May 4th, which is kind of incredible when you think about it, so that they didn't even start printing the stamps until 9 days before the issue date. And then the first shipment of stamps took place 3 days later on May 7th. They sent a large quantity to New York City, and then a quantity to the first state city of Fulton, Missouri. All in all, the first run printed almost 130 million stamps. And the issue proved to be so popular that the Bureau sent this issue back to press in July after the stamp had been on sale for for almost 2 months at that point and printed 15 million more. If there were any discernible differences between the two printings, that would be something you'd want to point out in the exhibit. However, for this stamp, there are no differences to point out. More on the stamp here. Here I've got, although it doesn't look like on the screen, this is a full pane that was pre-canceled with a handheld device. I've employed a exhibiting technique here called windowing. Basically, on the actual page, this area of the border here is cut out as a window, and then I've slipped the pane into that window, so half the pane is behind the page, and the part that you see is the part that's in the window. This is a good technique to use for when it saves space when you have a large item that otherwise would take up too much space, and it's not necessary for to show the entire pane to know that it's there. So this is a full pane, even though it doesn't look like it on the screen. Another thing you're going to want to include in any exhibit of a single stamp is to have examples of errors or other kind of what I call them on here printing anomalies, otherwise known as freaks. This stamp does not have any major errors in the catalog. So I've just got some printing freaks here that I've obtained over the years. In this block here, you can see the smear up at the top. This was caused by some solvent that leaked onto a freshly printed pane of stamps and caused the printing here to run. Here we've got just poor wiping of the plate causing all these streaks. And here we've got just a blob of ink that ran through a couple of the stamps there. I used to have a page in here with some fly speck varieties, different blobs and stuff that appear on the stamp. I took that page out for two reasons. One, because I ran out of space, and second of all, the little fly speck items were very difficult to see, and it really didn't add enough to the exhibit to keep that page in there. So, all right, so moving away from the stamp and getting closer to first day covers, the next chapter is about the first day. As a prelude to that, invitations were sent out to various people in and around the first day site. So here I have an invitation that was sent to this couple, inviting them to come to the ceremony. Also part of that invitation was an invitation to go to lunch after the ceremony. So this is a nice piece that highlights the actual first day. Every stamp first day ceremony, there's always a program, and those are readily available. So it's not difficult to find those and include those in the exhibits. And they're a key part of the first day story. So this is the front of the program. I could put this on a large page and show you the inside. What I thought was easier to do was just to take the text from the back of the program and reproduce it right there. So all that fits nicely onto the single page. This is another item from the first day, and this is this is one of my showpiece items in the exhibit. The post office department at that time, and maybe they still do, I'm not sure, but they would create folders for various dignitaries to present them at the ceremony with a full pane of the stamps. These are, these were never sold at the time. The people who received them kept them as mementos, keepsakes, and they don't come up in the marketplace too often. How I acquired this is kind of wild. I had shown the exhibit a couple of times in its early days, and I was at the end of one show. I was taking my exhibit down and checking it out with the guy at the exhibit desk, and he says, "Oh, Churchill, I was at a garage sale and I bought a folder that was about the stamp." He says, "It only cost me $2. You can have the folder if you want." I said, "Sure." I didn't know what he was talking about, but I'm not going to decline his offer. So I didn't think much of it, but a couple days later, I get a large package in there, and this folder was in there. Like I say, these are not easy to come by, and I was just kind of blown away by just being given this just purely by chance. This folder was prepared for, as you can see at the bottom, Mr. William Biggs. I researched him and found out that he was a trustee of Westminster College and a prominent attorney in St. Louis, and how his stamp presentation folder wound up on a garage sale in Minnesota some 50 years later, I don't know, but I was happy that it happened, and happy that it got into my collection eventually. Here's the actual newspaper from Fulton, May 13th, the day of issue. This was a big event in Fulton. There's two photographs right on the front page. Here on the left, people crowding the post office to buy the stamp. Here on the right, two college students who camped out in front of the post office in order to be the first ones to buy the stamp. Just another wonderful piece here that highlights the events in Fulton on that day. And someone actually turned this newspaper into a first day cover by applying the stamp and having it postmarked too on that day. Finally, getting into first day covers here, one thing you'll want to do is to show what postmarks were available on the first day. And here again, I've employed the windowing technique, where what you see here is actually cut out of the page, and then I've mounted the cover on the back side just to show the relevant part through the window. So we've got the machine stamp, or the machine cancel, the hand stamp, and then just the circular stamp that were in use that day. And oddly enough, some almost 55, 60 years later, those three items are still available for every new issue today. Finally, getting into the actual first day cover, the meat of the exhibit. Obviously, you've got to have some way to organize your covers in an exhibit. There's many different ways to do that. Some exhibits will organize them by the theme of the cachet. Some will do like a method of printing. I've kind of done a little bit of both here with my subcategories for the actual first days. Here, I've started with first days that were from governmental entities. First of all, the city of Fulton, they created their own cachet. The city clerk office. This is, you know, and the mayor utilized the same cache, and those were available on the first day. Other governmental entities, the Postmaster General corner card FDCs. There's a lot of literature about those. They started way back in the 1920s, and they went up through the end of 1970. And these were favors that, from the Postmaster General to various people. I don't know how you got on that list, but those covers are out there, and they are collecting category all of their own. A couple of members of Congress also created covers on their with their corner card envelopes. One that you'll see quite frequently is Thaddeus Dulski. He was in Congress from 59 to 74, and he was on the committee of the Post Office and Civil Service. So he serviced quite a few different issues. And then this one, Richard Bowling, a congressman from Missouri. So yeah, a bit of a tie into to this issue. One category that that judges will want you to have is to separately identify first caches. And with the Churchill issue, there were many of them. This one, I'll start with the one here on the right. This is the first Colorado card. You probably know that name from the silk caches that were produced for many years, but that line of caches actually started with this Churchill card created by Ray Malbec. Another identified first cache is this card by the Philatelic Center of New York, which was a stamp dealership in New York City. Some more first caches. This one by George Peters. This one by George Patterson. These are identified as first caches in the Malone's catalog. So it's relatively easy to find those, identify those as first caches. Other times you have to do a little bit of digging on your own. Moving Westminster College, where the stamp was issued, wanted to create its own cache as well. They contracted with Washington Press to create a cache specifically for the college, and of course Washington Press, also the makers of the Artcraft cache. This is a proof card that was that they printed at Washington Press. This was not an item that they sold. This was just something for internal review. So these are scarce items. And here's the actual cache that they produced for the college. The college sent these out. Had two different stuffers for these. One was this one here in the lower left, which is just the basic stuffer for the cache that you'll see most frequently. They also did a separate stuffer and sent this to some of their alumni. And you can see this one went to a doctor who was class of 43. So whenever you have stuffers, you know, they're part of the story too. Get them out of the envelopes and get them on the exhibit page too. That just enhances the story all the more. My next category of caches are those that are done by artists. since these are usually the most attractive of the caches that you'll have in the exhibit, you're going to want to make sure that however you lay out your pages and the placement of the frames, make sure that these don't wind up at the bottom of the frame, because the impact will be lost for if they're down at the bottom. The ideal place for your key items would be the second row, basically the eye level row of the frame. And so it takes a bit of effort, but you can finagle it so that these works of art basically are featured prominently when it's in the frames. These are by Herman Mall. You know, he's well thought of as an artist, but I think he did a rather he's not a great portrait artist. I don't think either one of his pictures of Churchill on top are very good. I think he did a little bit better with his add-on than he did here at the bottom. More artists created caches here. This one is up at the upper left. This is Melissa Fox. She did her caches in the 1980s, so that makes this one an add-on. There's a lot of difference of opinion about having add-on caches in an exhibit. I do it very sparingly, and only when I think it enhances the cover in a way that's unique. There's a ton of add-ons out there now that are, you know, computer generated and printed on 50-year-old covers. My advice is to not put those into your exhibit. I just don't think they belong there. I do have, like I said, I do have a couple of exceptions for some where the artwork is original, and the Melissa Fox one is one that's here. One of the premier artists is Ralph Dyer. This cache is not in the Malone's catalog. I didn't even know it existed until about 5 years or so ago. I got this came from his personal collection and presumably a proof. And then after I had that in the exhibit for a while, you know, one day this appears on eBay, and I was blown away because, first of all, I didn't know it existed as a service cover, and second of all, you'll note that the design is not the same as his proof here. So for whatever reason, he had two different designs he created here, and this is the one that actually got serviced. So you'll note I have red borders around these, and some other items you may have noticed on previous pages have the red borders. That's my way of telling the viewer that these are significant items and that you should pay special attention to them. And there is a notation on the title page too that says items of special significance are in the red border. That alerts the judges too that you know, pay attention to these items because they're key to the story. Another artist, Frank Ulrich, did his in watercolor, and he sold these. He advertised these in First Days, and he sold them for 75 cents a piece. And if you send him your 75 cents, he'd hand paint you one. And you never know what you would get because he made a lot of different designs. For the Churchill issue, I've got 5 different designs on this page, and on the following page, two more. Only one of these designs is in the Malone catalog, and it's this one right here. So just because you see something in Malone doesn't mean there isn't more out there to discover. Some more artwork here. It's a more original artwork one. And this is the Jacks. Not much known about Jacks, but those and not a whole lot of covers out there too. Here, this one, I don't know who created that. And you know, sometimes you get, the question comes up, you know, should you put something in the exhibit where you can't explain who or, you know, what the origin of the cover is? And I do put some unknown ones in there. I try to keep it to a minimum. I don't like to necessarily say I failed to figure out who created this, but I'm going to put it in my exhibit anyway. So I do have other unknowns that I just don't put in because I don't want to necessarily highlight the fact that I failed in my research and trying to figure out who created that. One thing you'll frequently see in first day cover exhibits is original artwork. This is something that has become somewhat of a you know, standard item because this artwork is out there and it's available. Judges will kind of expect to see it. This is the original artwork for Art Master. It's much reduced here on the screen, but this actual page is a quad page. It's 2 across, 2 down. Takes up a big chunk of it. You know, takes up 1/4 of a frame. So I've got the original artwork here, and then just to even make it more special, I've got an actual cachet here that was signed by Mrs. Churchill herself. She lived for 12 years after Winston passed, and I've seen other covers with her autograph and such. So she was not. She did honor requests that were sent to her. In fact, this one came with the actual note from her secretary that said, you know, with Lady Churchill's compliments too. So I thought that's a nice thing to put in the exhibit as well for that cover. I will say that my exhibit was stuck at a Ronnei level and did not get its first gold until I had this artwork in there. So it is a key item that judges will expect you to have some original artwork for some of the mass-produced casualties. It's kind of standard. Nothing special about these. These are just Art Master cachets, but these are what are known as unofficial. These were canceled on the first day, but someplace other than the first day city. This one, postmarked in Columbia, Missouri, which is 27 miles from Fulton. And this one in Kansas City, which is 150 miles away. So somebody purchased stamps in Fulton that day and then hit the road and had them and mailed them from other cities. That was unofficials are fun. They're kind of, this day and age, they've gone by the wayside now that stamps are issued in post offices all across the country on the first day. I kind of think we lost something there when all issues went to first day sales all across the country. My next category, next subcategory is just covers that were created for collectors, and then I've got this category down into printed cachets. Is this subcategory? So here we've got some Anderson. Anderson always printed his cachets in multiple colors. He did 3 different colors for Churchill. And I'll move through some of these kind of quickly here. Rosecraft was a Canadian cachet. And this cachet was actually created for the Canadian stamp, but quite a few of them, quite a few covers were created with the US issue too. Artcraft, obviously the most well-known and most quantity issued cache. Here again, we have the proof card for internal use. The cache is very common, so what I did was to find uncommon covers to display in the cache. This one, autographed by Karsh, who took the photograph of Churchill back in 1941. And this cover here, autographed by those involved in the production of the stamp. I'll briefly talk about this cover on the bottom here. This is a Bobby G cover. It took me years to find this. And what should have been a very common cover to find, I just could never find. I knew it existed. It's not in Malone's, but I knew it existed, and it just made me a little crazy for years. I could not find them, and then of course, you know, one day it just turns up on eBay, and there it is. And I hit buy it now, and I finally had the Bobby G cover that I could put in the exhibit. It's still the only one I've ever seen, but there's got to be more of them, and for some reason they are really scarce. Some other basic covers, Cold Craft. Here, here I've got an unknown. It's unknown in Malone's, and I haven't been able to figure it out. But since it's in Malone's, I felt it needed to be included. And I think judges expect that too. Anything that's in the Malone catalog, you should be able to either find it and put it in your exhibit, but if you can't, explain why you can't. I'm going to move, we're getting along here, so I'm going to move through some of these rather quickly. Great story on this one. This is the Flugo cover. Paul Hubbard was the artist for many years. When I first put the exhibit together, Hubbard, I didn't realize that Hubbard was still alive, but he had an article in First Days, so then I wrote to him and I said, hey, would you please autograph these Churchill covers and send them back to me? And then I rather coyly said, by the way, whatever happened to your artwork for this issue? Does it still exist? And Hubbard took the bait, and he very graciously just sent me the artwork for the stamp. He still had it in his archives. And as far as I know, and he died a couple of years after that. As far as I know, I have not seen any of his artwork in the marketplace. So I don't know what became of it after his death. I sure hope it wasn't destroyed. But I do have this artwork that he did for Churchill stamp. Let's just flip through some of these rather quickly. Sarzen metallic. This is a cachet craft signed by the postal officials who were at the first day ceremony. Again, an unknown at the bottom there. Also Farnham. Let's skip over these. Churchill was briefly a member of the Masons, and so there are quite a few Masonic themed covers out there. This is the cachet at the bottom here. This is the cachet for the British commemoratives that was used for the American stamp. The British had two horizontal commemoratives. They actually have little guidelines for where to place the stamp, as you can see there. World War II patriotic covers. Some of those were still, some of those envelopes are still available 20 years later, so they became, like these on this page too, they became Winston Churchill first aid covers. By the way, I do have this, my whole exhibits online, and I can give you the URL for that later if you'd like to look at some of these pages more carefully and read some of the descriptions here. So let's keep going here. talk about every cover. My next category is collector-made caches. Basically, caches that collectors made for themselves and stuck in their albums afterwards and somehow made it into the marketplace after they stopped collecting or died or whatever. So most of the time you can't identify who made these, but sometimes you can, usually because of the list or something like that. This is covers created by Bob Jones. He was an editor at Lynn Stamp News. I wrote an article about these covers in the first days, I think back in 2015 or so, where I tried to decipher why all these stamps are on all these covers. It's actually kind of fascinating. Got some general purpose caches in there. Some exhibitors say don't bother with general purpose because they are not related to the actual, they're not related to the stamp. I think they have a place in the exhibit. I haven't really had a judge tell me to take them out. More general purpose. Couple of forgeries here. This is the Jerry Mather forgery. You'll note that his story is well documented. He created fake first day covers with fake postmarks and sold them as genuine. He actually went to jail. Here is a 1966 cache on a 1965 cover. That's impossible, so obviously somebody has faked that. And then got some non-standard first days. Basically, I call that my non-envelope category. So I've got some cards. If someone has taken reprint of the postal bulletin and that postmark, the Ham and Maxi cards, more varieties of cards, including the Artcraft Credo card. These are other cards. These are Butler and Kelly items. We've got various full page items. Postcards with stamps placed on the front with a first day cover or the first day of issue postmark are common. We've got a variety of those. I have more than I put in the exhibit. It gets to be a little overkill to do too many. And perhaps I have too many. We've got a number of those. Other items here, these are sheets of parchment, letterhead with the college, Westminster College. My next category is promotional. These are covers that were meant to promote something. Here, this is the sent on behalf of the Georgia State College Alumni Association, probably seeking to get a donation as well. This is another, I'll talk about this one because this is another one that vexed me for many, many years. Beacon's Van and Storage Company, the moving van people, they sent out promotional covers to their client list. They had them produced by Artmaster. Artmaster took their, after they had printed their covers, then took the plate and added the word Beacons to it, and then printed more covers that were just for Beacons. I knew these covers existed, and it took me forever to find an actual cover. For some reason, these covers just didn't survive. Apparently the people that received them treated them like junk mail, unlike covers addressed to doctors, which we'll get into here shortly. This is the only one I've ever seen, and I searched for many years before I found it. And again, it just popped up on eBay one day. There it was, and made it mine. Drug manufacturers use first day covers as advertising. This one, Ayers Laboratories. Other advertisers using first day covers. We've got a good selection of those. Book publisher here would use the first day to promote a new book that was being issued just the following week. Texas Refinery, which is probably known to many of you, they were big into first day covers in the 1960s, using it to promote their business. Other entities using first days to promote their business. Another category that judges will expect you to have in the exhibit are first days to foreign destinations. So here I've got covers that were sent along with the appropriate postage, and they required more than the usual single stamp to get to there. So here's a couple to England, 15 cent. This is the correct rate. Airmail. This one has 25 cents on it. I don't know why. If it was, it's either got 2 extra stamps or it's missing one if it was a double weight cover. And at any rate, it got forwarded more than once here, so that makes it a little bit more interesting. Covers to the Netherlands, West Germany. We get to some of the more unusual destinations. Here's one to India. You can see this one covers heavily toned. India has a lot different climate than other parts of the world, so that caused the cover to age prematurely. Promotional cover to Israel, South Korea. Here's one to Japan. Got all sorts of auxiliary markings because it couldn't be delivered as addressed. Two countries in Africa. Blue in South America. Here's another one that went to Australia. Bounced around quite a bit before it was returned. I've got one page here devoted to what I call second day covers. You could also call those covers that are on the first day of national sale. So this would be the day after the first day in Fulton. Some different cashiers and different cities. In a traditional first day cover exhibit, you also have to show how the stamp was used beyond the first day. So this being a commemorative is meant to pay the first class letter rate. So that is my first example here. This one happened to be used when it was sent from the Churchill Memorial in Fulton. They obviously pleased to use the stamp on their own. So 1 ounce rate, 2 ounce rate here below. Here's examples. This one from a RPO, a railway post office. This one from an HPO, a highway post office. Here's one postmarked aboard a Navy ship that was involved in the recovery of the Gemini mission in June of '65. I do note that this is a philatelic cover. It's judges will want you to specify that, just so you're aware, just so they're aware that you're aware that this was not, just standard use in the mail of that stamp. But interesting enough for me to include it. The same goes for this cover here. This is from the Detroit River Mail Service. This is a floating post office that delivers mail to ships on the Detroit River. Still does that today. The business reply envelope, which didn't need a stamp, but got one anyway. And here's a letter that was sent to a ship that had been decommissioned in the previous year, got returned December. Different usages here. Here we've got, this is an extra large postcard, so it had to be franked with letter rate postage rather than postcard rate postage, which would have been a penny cheaper. This one here, this is the special cancellation that was used in Providence, Rhode Island for a few years. Tell the story of that there. Quite an unusual postmark there. Here's a postage due usage. Moving into the airmail rates, domestic airmail rate was 8 cents at the time. So this plus the Churchill stamp plus a 3-center would pay the rate. Special delivery. Special delivery rate was 30 cents. So this one has the 30 cents plus 1 extra for the postage, perfectly paying the 35-cent rate. An insured mail usage. Some registered usages here. This cover here on the upper left actually is 5 cents short. There is 60 cents on this. There should be 65. Here we have registered plus a return receipt, 75-cent postage correctly paid. And here's a larger package that paid a registered rate. The bulk of that. Churchill stamps paying the bulk of that. Susan D. Here's a full pane that was used to pay postage due. This was from a Catholic publishing house who used full panes of stamps to pay postage due, and then those panes would be returned to them, and they turned around and sold the stamps to packet makers. This particular pane escaped being broken up in packets. Certificate of mailing fee, 5 cents, often paid with a stamp. So Churchill stamp there. Moving into the international rates, 5 cents to Canada. Remember back when sending a letter to Canada cost the same as sending a letter here in the United States. That ended in 1985. But back in '65, you could send a letter to Canada for 5 cents. The surface rate back in '65 was 11 cents. So here's Churchill paying that rate here. There's a 2-ounce surface rate, 18 cents. This cover here, an attempt to send mail to the Canton Island. The U.S. Post Office there had just closed, and this cover was returned. Printed matter rate. When I get into some of the various airmail rates, 15 cents to England. This is to Geneva, 30-cent rate. This is a 1/2 ounce to New Zealand, 25 cents. This one, a very unusual destination, Guinea in Africa, 25 cents. And this one to the Soviet Union, $1.25 on. International postcard rate, 11 cents here. An aerogram, which would have cost 11 cents. It's been uprated an additional 5 cents, probably because somebody put something inside the aerogram, and that was not permitted to do. If you did do that, then you had to pay the full airmail rate. So that's my speculation as to why that cover had the Churchill stamp added to it. Some international registered usage. This one to Finland. There's more stamps on the back, which which I do not show, but I mentioned in the text here. And then a pack boat rate. You could mail post mail aboard a ship, and if it was a U.S. ship, you could use a U.S. stamp, and then when it reached port, it would receive a postmark, a foreign postmark. This is, obviously a philatelic cover, but it is nicely shows how that system worked. And now we've reached the conclusion. The conclusion page, you kind of want to wrap up the exhibit in some way. I recently changed the conclusion page. I just say the stamp was taken off sale in 1966, and after that it became part of philately. And to illustrate that, I've got the first day cover that was sold in a dime store, rack, still inside the packaging. And then I, just for the heck of it, I add a postscript to that, saying, but wait, there's more. Churchill did make another appearance on a U.S. stamp on the 50th anniversary of World War II series. So I thought that was just a nice way to wrap it up. So that's that's it. That's my walk through the exhibit. I hope you've been kept your interest as I went through this. If you've got questions, I'm happy to take a few minutes and answer some.
Thank you, Todd. I think we got first question up is from Michelle in the chat. When searching for original art for a stamp, do you have advice keywords to search for, and what's the best way in general to find art related for the collection?
Henry Gittner, who is at goes to all the big shows, most notably the Great American Stamp Show. He's a great resource for original artwork. He's just got binders and binders of it. He's got all the Art Master artwork. He's got, I think he's got some of the Art Craft artwork as well. And he's got other artwork too from other fashion makers. If you're looking for artwork, he's the go-to guy.
I do have a follow-up question, if I may.
Sure.
Would that be acceptable? You mentioned that this exhibit is available online. I wondered if you would put the link to that exhibit in the chat.
Yeah. Let's see.
Because I would love to take a look at this in more detail.
Yeah.
And I really want to thank you, because I have collected a series of first day covers with stamps from the Philippines that happen to fall into a topical collection that's my main collection, which is typewriters on stamps. And I came across this series of covers for a set of Philippine diamond-shaped stamps featuring government workers using a typewriter. They're really cool, large stamps and interesting shape. And then I started finding these covers. And now I'm thinking, well, that would make a pretty interesting story. I'd already decided I wanted to write up the story. It hadn't occurred to me to try to exhibit it, but you have inspired me.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear it.
So now I want to explore this exhibit even more and kind of take some cues. Thank you for the detail that you provided here.
Yeah, my pleasure. No, I put the link in the chat, so I hope you can see that, and so you should be able to cut and paste that and put that in the browser. And I think you should be able to view the whole exhibit that way.
President Lloyd, hand raised. Chair recognizes.
I had two questions. First, how do you decide what to leave out?
Um, First of all, sometimes you're limited by space. You just have to say to yourself, is this piece, even though it may be, you may be really proud of it and think it's a great piece, you have to ask yourself, does this advance the story? And if you're honest with yourself and the answer to that is no, it really doesn't, then you're probably best to leave it out. Another thing I do is, you get feedback from judges, and judges will say, you know what, this piece here is, it doesn't belong in there, or it's not important, take it out. I'm kind of stubborn. I never take anything out the first time a judge tells me to do it. But if I hear that comment again from a different judge, then I realize that they were right, I'm wrong, and the piece should come out.
And the other question I had was, it's a first day cover exhibit, but it seems to me like almost half of it's not first day covers. You've got stamps, plate blocks, zip blocks, then you've got mail that isn't on the first day.
Right.
I don't know, as a purist, I just wonder, I mean, I'm not interested in personally in collecting misprints or commercial usages.
And that's the nature of what's called the traditional first day cover exhibit. You have to tell the story, not just the first day and not just the first day covers, but you've got to tell the entire story of the stamp. And perhaps this is a good time to point out that on the AFDCS website, in the exhibiting section, there's a link at the bottom of that page that has an excerpt from the APS manual on exhibiting and judging, and it's the appendix for first day cover exhibits. That appendix really lays out how to do a traditional first day cover exhibit. And everything that I've talked about in there is pretty much follows that template that's in the manual. And that's, if you want to do a traditional one, that's basically the format to follow. If you want to do just a cachet study, you could do that as well. But then that would not be what is termed a traditional.
Can you do a cachet study of an issue?
I haven't seen that, but you could certainly do it. Whether how acceptable that would be to judges, I don't know. I haven't tried to do that. So I don't know how receptive they would be to that.
So Liam's hand go up.
Yes, I did. Thank you, Todd, very much for this. This is fascinating. My dilemma is this: I collect the 1981 James Hoban stamp,
Okay.
and it was the 18-cent, the 20-cent, and then the Irish stamp. Okay,
Right.
and I have over 500 different covers. And what I was fascinated by, what you all were just talking about, the cachets. I have about 8 Ralph Dyer cachets, which are all different. The little scroll work is different on each one of them. And so I was very interested that you have, you outlined yours in red. Those are the most expensive covers in my collection.
Right.
And of course, the problem is, because I collect the James Hoban stamp, having bought James Hoban first day covers on eBay, dealers will put the James Hoban stamp on the envelopes for me. Okay. And when Postmaster Bolger was announcing the James Hoban stamp, one of his remarks was, the post office hopes that this stamp is going to be used for a very long time. And is it fair to include, examples of this stamp, in the 21st century?
No, my rule of thumb for postal uses is use of the stamp while it was currently available at the post office.
Okay. Yeah.
Anybody could create a cover today, and
Sure.
I could send a priority mail package with 100. I don't even know how many I would need, but
Yeah, sure.
Churchill stamps, but that would have no place in the exhibit because
Yeah.
it's not a contemporary to the issue.
Okay.
So yeah, so keep out, don't put in uses that are beyond the normal use of the stamp.
So that wouldn't even be appropriate for the conclusion page saying, you know, look at the stamp, the still is still being used because of.
Yeah, no, the conclusion page, you have some more leeway because
Yeah,
you basically put whatever you want in the conclusion.
okay,
I have a
good.
different Churchill exhibit, 1974, the British centennial issue, and there's 4 different Churchill stamps that were issued in 1974. In my
Right.
on my conclusion page, I got a cover from 2014 that's plastered with the 1974 stamp, and there are some auxiliary markings on there that some postal clerk had to make sure that these were valid stamps because they didn't recognize them. So I thought
Oh,
that
sure.
was a fun way to end that exhibit.
yeah, that is, that's good.
And in
Yeah.
fact, I received the AAPE best conclusion page for that. So I'm proud of that one.
Okay, well, thank you very much. This was very enlightening for me. It really helps me to organize, you know, my own James Hoban work. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Foster, did I see your hand?
We were talking about Ralph Dyer and the original artwork. This is something I just recently picked up for Henry Gittner from the 1184 Norris Dam issue that I collect. He has a whole bunch of Ralph Dyer's original artwork now too. This is part of the design, and I'll second what William just said. I have a couple of Dyers for the issue, and each one's a little bit different. So wasn't surprising that Todd's artist proof doesn't match the actual cover.
Yeah. The one thing, I would caution you, sure, you can find Ralph Dyer ones and say, oh, I've got 10 different ones and each one is a little bit different. There's no reason to put all 10 in the exhibit. A judge will tell you that's overkill, and that the minute differences between one cover and another are not significant enough to make a big deal about it in the exhibit. And they'll actually tell you to pare that down to maybe 1 or 2 covers.
Ulrich's another one where for woman suffrage stamp, I have 4 that's each one has a little bit different coloring in. If I do exhibit them, I'll probably overlap them.
Yeah, that's a good way to do that. It gets really tough to do when it's something like a Dorothy Knapp. I think D.A. Lux once told me that he's got all the Dorothy Knapps for the Brooklyn Bridge stamp that he exhibits, and he desperately wants to put them all in the exhibit because they're all so beautiful and they're all a little different. But the judges, he's been told by judges not to put them all in. It's just overkill. So. Anyone else?
I'll fire one at you, Todd. For the larger pieces that you have, so like for the cachet artwork and the presentation album, how do you mount that on the page, knowing how thick those items are?
Yeah, it can be a challenge. What I've done on maybe I have done in the Churchill exhibit too. What you're seeing on the screen, of course, is I've cheated a little bit for the for the digital version. I've taken pictures and shrunk them down a little bit so it would fit. But for the actual items, like on the artwork, they're encased in a big sleeve, and then I've used some heavy-duty double stick tape on the back to actually, place it right on the page. So you're just going to have to experiment. I mean, that art master artwork that's in the Churchill exhibit here caused me no end of headaches for years before I finally came up with a way to do it. The bigger pieces are always a challenge. It makes transporting the exhibit to shows all over the country a big challenge as well. The Churchill exhibit I will not ship anymore because it will the large items. I used to ship it in a giant picture shipping box that museums use to ship artwork. That just got to be too expensive and too crazy. So I'm not going to ship this exhibit anywhere anymore. If I'm going to show it again, which I don't know if I am, I would have to be bringing it myself.
And I presume similar challenge for like the engraving plates because of the weight of it.
Yeah. Those I, back with an extra piece of cardboard in the page protector to give it more stability, and hopefully, it keeps it intact when it's moving around. But yeah, those are a challenge too.
Lloyd, you had another one?
Yeah, I did. Todd, did I hear you correctly that on the press release, all 3 pages are actually there in the exhibit? You just show one?
Yeah.
But you have all 3 of them there.
They're all 3. Yeah. And you can see, if you go back to that, you can see that you can see the staple there. All 3 pages are there, but it's not necessary. You're going to want to have them all of them there, but it's not necessary to show them all.
Why is it necessary to have them all there? Did the judges open it up and check?
In theory, they can. They can ask they can ask anytime for a frame to be open so they can inspect an item. That rarely happens. In fact, I don't think I've ever seen it happen, but it's something that they can do. And they can, if they want to see, well, let's see what the back of this thing looks like. If they have any questions as to whether it's a legitimate item or something, they have the ability to request that the frame be open if they can inspect something more closely.
And I had one more question. I'm sorry, I just wrote questions, notes while I was doing it. Is there a significance to the Eleanor Roosevelt stamp in that Herman Mall date of death cover?
It was a current stamp at the time. That stamp was issued in 1963, so it was a relatively current stamp. Maybe Herman Mall chose that because of Churchill's great friendship with Franklin Roosevelt. After Franklin Roosevelt died, Churchill came to the U.S. He didn't come to the U.S. for the funeral in April of 1945, but he did come the following year, and Mrs. Roosevelt accompanied Winston Churchill to Franklin's grave. So there is that connection between them. So I think it's an appropriate stamp that was used by Herman Mall to create that cover.
Questions, feel free to, oh, I saw you, Foster.
Foster.
One sort of commercial, a real good compliment to this presentation is the course that Chuck O'Brien just did for the APS on exhibiting it. And he went through the taxonomy, he lays out the exhibit, and it very well complements this presentation. Between the two of them, I have a lot to think about. And that course should be available through the APS C3A learning platform.
Yeah, I actually missed his presentation there. I was on vacation for one of the parts, but I have no doubt that it was superb, just like everything Mr. O'Brien does.
But what I liked is he took an 8-page exhibit and broke it down section by section, how he laid it out, and it dovetailed a lot with how you did. But of course, no 2 exhibits are exactly the same. And one other quick note, I'm just looking at the exhibit. I thank you for documenting those Bresnik general purpose caches. I found a few of them recently. I had been unable to find information on them. I'm glad you did.
Yeah, I mean, I identified 3 different types, even though the picture remained the same year after year. You changed the fonts various times. So I was able to document 3 different varieties there, in addition to all the different colors of the cards.
Yeah. A fair number of them came on the market in the last year or so.
Yeah.
I knew nothing about it, and I was glad you sent the link to the exhibit because I quick went back and read that page and now I know, at least know who it is.
Yep. I will say that if anybody who's serious about collecting or exhibiting first day covers, if you don't already have it, you've got to get the archives of first days, the digital archives. That will, that's where a lot of my information on these cachet makers was gleaned. There you go. You can get you can get it on a flash drive, or you can get it on. If you still have old technology, you can get it on a DVD, and then you can order that on the AFDCS website. A wealth of information in there that would really is helpful when.
If I can throw one more commercial in there, we do need first day cover exhibits for the Great American Stamp Show. You're probably going to see an email on it later tonight, but if you are an exhibitor or want to be an exhibitor, we need the exhibits for the Americover section of Great American Stamp Show.
Absolutely.
And commercial.
Any more? We'll take one more.
I have one more.
Okay.
What I am stuck with as April 23rd, 1992, there was a U.S. commemorative or definitive stamp, the White House, a flag over the White House. Okay, one of the typical. Now, what they did was they repurposed 1981 James Holden stamps so that there are the two first day issue cancellations on many of these covers, and many of them are Masonic covers. Would that be a completely separate topic from the 1981 first day cover?
I'm gonna say probably yes.
Okay.
If the Holden stamps came out in 81,
Right.
Something the following year, even though there might be a connection to them, it's probably a different topic.
Yeah, this is 1992, so 11 years later.
Yeah.
And see, because Holden was the architect of the White House, so many different White House stamps will have the Holden stamp added onto it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That might be something for a conclusion page. Epilogue.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. That's good. Yeah, thank you.
Sure.
Mhm.
Well, I've been talking too long, and you've all been very patient. So, thanks for tuning in, and I hope I've given you some good information. And if you have other questions about the exhibit, feel free to email me, and I'll be happy to help.